these are forces that are not human?
Да нет, я, честно говоря, так не думаю. Я думаю о том, что
No, to be honest, I
мировое
don't think
сообщество
so.
развивается вот по своим внутренним
My opinion is that the development of the world community is in accordance with the inherent laws, and those laws are what they are.
Так было всегда в истории человечества.
It's always been this way in the history of mankind.
Размножались,
Some nations and countries rose, became stronger and more numerous, and then left the international stage, losing the status they had accustomed to.
Наверное, не нужно приводить эти примеры, но начиная
There's probably no need for me to give examples, but we could start with the Genghis Khan and horde conquerors, the Golden Horde, and then end with the Roman Empire.
человечество каждый
It seems that there has never been anything like the Roman Empire in the history of mankind.
потенциал варваров постепенно накапливался.
Nevertheless, the potential of the barbarians gradually grew, as did their population. In general, the barbarians were getting stronger and begun to develop economically, as we would say today.
Экономически они стали укрепляться.
This eventually led to the collapse of the Roman Empire and the regime imposed by the Romans.
500 лет. Этот процесс,
However, it took 5 centuries for the Roman Empire to fall apart.
в сегодняшней ситуации
The
разница
difference with what is happening now
процессы изменений
is that all the processes of change are happening at a much faster pace than in Roman times.
So when does the AI empire start, do you think?
у меня всё в более
You're
сложные
asking
вопросы.
increasingly more complicated questions. To answer them, you need to be an expert in big
Для того,
numbers,
чтобы
big
ответить,
data,
надо быть,
and
конечно,
AI.
специалистом в
Mankind is
сфере
currently
чисел.
facing many threats.
В сфере вот
Due to
этой
the genetic researches, it is now possible to create a superhuman, a specialized human being, a genetically engineered athlete, scientist, military man. There are reports that Elon Musk has already had a chip implanted in the human brain in the USA.
Илон Маск внедрил уже чип в мозг какого-то человека.
What do you think of that?
Ну, Маска, я думаю, что Маска остановить
Well,
невозможно.
I think there's no stopping Elon Musk. He will do as he sees fit.
Надо искать
Nevertheless,
способы.
you need to find some common ground with him, search for ways to persuade him. I think he's a smart person, I truly believe he is. So you need to reach an agreement with him because this process needs to be formalized and subjected to certain rules.
Того, что будет происходить с ним в связи с развитием вот этих новейших исследований и технологий в генетике.
Humanity has to consider what is going to happen due to the newest development in genetics
Поэтому
or in AI.
вот
One can
тогда,
make
когда
an approximate
человечество
prediction of what will
почувствовало
happen.
угрозу своему существованию от ядерного оружия, все начали обладатели ядерного
Once
оружия, начали
mankind
между собой
felt an
договариваться.
existential
Потому
threat
что
coming
понимали,
from
что
nuclear
их
weapons,
неаккуратное применение
all
может
nuclear
привести
nations began to
к
come to
полному
terms with one another since
Когда
they realized
наступит
the
понимание того,
negligent
что
use of nuclear weaponry could
беспредельное,
drive
бесконтрольное
humanity to
развитие
extinction.
искусственного интеллекта, либо генетики, либо еще каких-то современных направлений, остановить которые невозможно.
It is impossible to stop
Невозможно
research in genetics or AI today, just as it was impossible to stop the use of gunpowder back in the day.
Эти исследования все равно будут. Но когда человечество почувствует угрозу для себя,
But as soon as we realize that the threat comes from unbridled and uncontrolled development of AI, or genetics, or any other field, the time will come to reach an international agreement on how to regulate these things.
I appreciate all the time you've given us. I just got to ask you one last question, and that's about someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Roy, thank you so much for Super Chat.
мы столько сделали жестов доброй воли что, мне кажется, мы исчерпали все лимиты.
We have done so many gestures of goodwill
Well
out of
said.
decency that I think we have run out of them.
Ни разу не ответил. Но
We have never seen anyone reciprocate to us in a similar manner.
что мы
However, in theory, we can say that we do not rule out that we can do that
не исключаем того, что мы можем это
if our
сделать
partners
при
take reciprocal steps.
встречном движении со стороны наших
When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services.
представителей специальных служб.
Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question.
На то, чтобы не решить это.
There is no taboo to settle this
Мы
issue.
готовы ее решать.
We are willing to solve
Там
it.
есть определенные условия, которые
But there are certain terms being discussed via special services
по
channels.
партнерским каналам между спецслужбами.
I believe an agreement can be reached.
So typically, I mean, this stuff has happened for obviously centuries. One country catches another spy within its borders, it trades it for one of its own intel guys in another country. I think what makes, and it's not my business, but what makes this different is the guy's obviously not a spy, he's a kid. And maybe he was breaking your law in some way, but he's not a super spy, and everybody knows that. And he's being held hostage in exchange, which is true. With respect, it's true, and everyone knows it's true. So maybe he's in a different category. Maybe it's not fair to ask for, somebody else in exchange for letting him out. Maybe it degrades Russia to do that.
Вы знаете, можно как угодно говорить, что такое шпион, что не шпион.
You know, you can give different interpretations to what constitutes a spy, but there are certain things provided by law. If person gets secret information and does that in conspiratorial manner, then this is qualified as espionage. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was receiving classified, confidential information, and he did it covertly. Maybe he did that out of carelessness or his own initiative. Considering the sheer fact, this is qualified as espionage. The fact has been proven, as he was caught red-handed when he was receiving this information. If it had been some far-fetched excuse, some fabrication, something not proven, it would have been a different story then. But he was caught red-handed when he was secretly getting confidential information. What is it then?
But are you suggesting that he was working for the US government or NATO, or he was just a reporter who was given material he wasn't supposed to have? Those seem like very different things.
Я не знаю, на кого он работал. Но повторяю еще раз.
I don't know who he was working for. But I would like to reiterate that getting classified information in secret is called espionage, and he was working for the US Special Services, some other agencies. I don't think he was working for Monaco, as Monaco is hardly interested in getting that information. It is up to special services to come to an agreement. Some groundwork has been laid. There are people who, in our view, are not connected with special services. Let me tell you a story about a person serving a sentence in an allied country of the US. That person, due to patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals. During the events in the Caucasus, do you know what he was doing? I don't want to say that, but I will do it anyway. He was laying our soldiers, taken prisoner, on the road and then drove his car over their heads. What kind of person is that? Can he even be called human? But there was a patriot who eliminated him in one of the European capitals. Whether he did it of his own volition or not, that is a different question.
Yeah, but Evan Gershkovich didn't do that. I mean, that's a completely different. I mean, this is a 32-year-old newspaper reporter.
He committed something different. He's not just a journalist. I reiterate, he's a journalist who was secretly getting confidential information. Yes, it is different, but still, I'm talking about other people who are essentially controlled by the US authorities, wherever they are serving a sentence.
Идет диалог.
There is an ongoing dialogue between the special services. This has to be resolved in a calm, responsible, and professional manner. They are keeping in touch, so let them do their work.
Тот человек, о котором вы сказали, господин.
I do not rule out that the person you refer to, Mr. Gershkovich, may return to his motherland.
В тюрьме в России.
By the end of the day, it does not make any sense to keep him in prison in Russia. We want the US Special Services to think about how they can contribute to achieving the goals our special services are pursuing.
Те проблемы,
We are ready to talk.
перед нашими
Moreover, the talks are underway. And there have been many successful examples of these talks crowned with success.
договаривались.
Probably this is going to be crowned with success as well,
Но только надо договариваться.
but we have to come to an agreement.
I hope you let him out. Mr. President, thank you.
Мне тоже хотелось.
I also want him to return to his homeland at last. I'm absolutely sincere, but let me say once again, the dialogue continues. The more public we render things of this nature, the more difficult it becomes to resolve them. Everything has to be done in calm manner.
I wonder if that's true
Закрытом
with the war, though. Also, I mean, I want to ask one more question, which is, and maybe you don't want to say so for strategic reasons, but are you worried that what's happening in Ukraine could lead to something much larger and much more horrible? And how motivated are you just to call the U.S. government and say, let's come to terms?
Interesting question, by the way.
Так, послушайте, я же сказал.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We are willing to negotiate. It is the Western side, and Ukraine is obviously a satellite state of the US. It is evident. I do not want you to take it as if I'm looking for a strong word or an insult, but we both understand what is happening. The financial support, $72 billion was provided. Germany ranks second, then other European countries come. Dozens of billions of US dollars are going to Ukraine. There's a huge influx of weapons. In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to a negotiating table, rescind this absurd decree. We did not refuse.
Sure, but you already said it. I didn't think you meant it as an insult because you already said correctly, it's been reported that Ukraine was prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So of course they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Но если администрация Зеленского на Украине отказалась от переговоров, я исхожу из
Well,
того, что
if the Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate, I assume they did it under the instruction from Washington. If Washington believes it to be the wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with a way out.
Пусть они от него отказываются.
It was not us who made this decision, it was them. So let them go back on it. That is
Теперь мы
it.
должны искать выход из этого неправильного решения.
However, they made the wrong decision, and now we have to look for a way out of the situation to correct their mistakes.
Пусть и исправляют.
They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening in Ukraine.
Правильно. Но
Right.
мы уже добились этого.
And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation. He affixed his signature to some